Now moving on, the next topic that I would like to take is women. Women is very lengthy. Women would cover around 20% of your syllabus because it is there in all 3 units. So how do we approach women? I will start with the status of women in India, typically from the ancient period. Ante Indus Valley civilization, very briefly, what was the status of women? Ancient period, we talk about the early Vedic period, the later Vedic period. What was the status of women? Then we talk about the medieval period, the modern period, the current status of women. All this is important. Now you might ask me, ma'am, why is this important for us? Endukante, see, all these are problems related to women in India. Most of these problems find their roots in the medieval ancient periods. In fact, you would be surprised if I tell you that child marriages were practiced even in ancient period, but child marriages became a norm, a custom, a rule only in the medieval period. Why it became a rule in medieval period, I'll tell you. So atla we are going to understand how the status of women has been changing over a period of time to understand the root cause of most of the problems that women face in India. Aithe when I come to the current status of women in India, here you will get all these indexes. I'm sure you must have heard of the gender inequality index or the global gender gap index. Basically we call it as the gender gap index. So gender gap index, ivanni manaki teliyali, ivi chaala important. Veetiki manaki em teliyalante, first you should know who gives this index. What are the parameters for this index? Is it an annual index or a biannual index? Then you should know what is India's current status, what was India's previous rank, and why was there an improvement or degradation in the rank of the rank that India has. Idi meeku current affairs lo kuda important. This will come in current affairs. This is also related to society. So the basic idea here is the module should cover not just the static part of your syllabus, but it should also cover the dynamic part. This is your dynamic part of the syllabus. I'm going to ensure that the latest rankings are given under this. So this is about the status of women in India. Ee women's movements edaithe undo, you might say that it is not directly there in your syllabus. I totally agree that it is not there directly in your syllabus. However, there are many movements related to women in India that have significantly contributed to the change in the status of women in India. For example, take the case of Nirbhaya. We had such a major incident, the unfortunate case of Nirbhaya, after which there was a massive movement which led to the enactment of the Nirbhaya Act. On the basis of Nirbhaya Act, an improvisation to this act has been the Disha Act. So Nirbhaya and Disha have significantly contributed to a large extent to addressing sexual abuse in India. Okay, so atla manaki there are many things. You will be surprised to know that custodial rape was not an offence in India. Acid attack was never listed as an offence in India before Nirbhaya was enacted. Atla, every movement of women, every movement for the empowerment or emancipation of women actually led to some change in the status of women. Inka meeku ardham kavadaniki simple example chepta, something that you can relate to. See, in 1920s there was a representation given to the British government on representation of women in legislature. This paved way to inclusion of a clause in the Montagu-Chelmsford Reforms 1919 Act, basically, in which they said that any province is free to allow women to be represented, and that paved way for Madras giving representation to women for election of women for the first time in India. So itlanti facts meeku చాలా important. Avanni movements lo cover aitayi. Ee movements I'm going to cover as a part of the status of women, and movements are very important because you tend to get more questions from here. It is all factual. A movement, for example, Sati, what was the last recorded sati in India. It was Roop Kanwar's sati, which actually led to the enactment of the Sati Prohibition Act in India. So atla meeku a incident ayindi, dan valla a movement ochindi, and what was the outcome of the movement, what measure did the government take because of the movement. That part we are going to discuss in movements. Then provisions for women, constitutional laws, policy, national women's policy ఉంటుంది. Institution, National Commission for Women, ఇది మీకు మళ్ళీ పాలిటీతో ఓవర్లాప్ అవుతుంది. కమిషన్స్ అని ఎందుకు రాశానంటే, ఐ డోంట్ నో if you are aware, but there is a commission called Status of Women in India, a commission that has been appointed time and again to study the status of women in India and make recommendations. The first commission on status of women in India has given a very famous report called Towards Equality, which was submitted in 1974. This question has been asked in every exam, including civil services. Towards Equality anna peru chala important. So that part I'm going to cover. Idantha factual, so I'm going to cover it here. And the last would be the schemes. Schemes law, we are going to cover both Government of India schemes and Government of AP schemes. Prati scheme ki you should know when was it launched, where was it launched, what is the main purpose of the scheme, what is the mode of implementation of the scheme, does it have any monetary benefit or not, and what are the non-monetary benefits, what issues related to women do they address, who are the women who will be covered under it, and what is the target segment for the scheme. ఇవన్నీ facts I'm going to bulletedలో explain చేస్తే మీకు ఏమవుతుందంటే it becomes very easy for you to remember. And remember students, this part will again overlap for you with economy. ఈ పార్ట్ మీకు ఎకానమీ కూడా యూజ్ అవుతుంది. ఎకానమీలో మీరు ఏం చేయాలంటే యూ హ్యావ్ టు యాడ్ వన్ మోర్ థింగ్, దట్ వుడ్ బి వాట్ ఈస్ ది బడ్జెట్ అలొకేటెడ్, బడ్జెట్ అలొకేషన్, సెంట్రల్ ఫండింగ్ ఎంత, స్టేట్ ఫండింగ్ ఎంత, దట్ షుడ్ బి యాడెడ్ ఇన్ ఎకానమీ. అపార్ట్ ఫ్రమ్ దట్ రిమైనింగ్ ఫ్యాక్ట్స్ విల్ బీ ద సేమ్, బీ ఇట్ ఎకానమీ ఆర్ సొసైటీ. సో దిస్ ఇస్ ప్రొవిజన్స్ రిలేటెడ్ టు విమెన్. ద బిగ్గెస్ట్ టాపిక్ వుడ్ బి crime against women, in which we discuss basically I'm going to first tell you what are the different types of crimes that happen against women. For example, we say domestic violence, we say social violence, there is something called as criminal violence. So how do we define domestic violence, social violence, criminal violence, what are the examples for these three types of crimes, avanni explain చేసిన తర్వాత ఇవన్నిటికీ ఐఎమ్ గోయింగ్ టు టెల్ యూ ద మీనింగ్. యూ విల్ బీ సర్ప్రైజ్ దట్ లీగల్లీ దెర్ విల్ బీ అ మీనింగ్ ఫర్ ఆల్ దీస్ టర్మ్స్. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్, సెక్షువల్ హెరాస్మెంట్ అట్ వర్క్ ప్లేస్ హ్యాస్ బీన్ ఇన్ న్యూస్ కంటిన్యూస్లీ. అంటే మీ టూ క్యాంపెయిన్ నడిచింది, సో ఇట్ ఈస్ అ వెరీ ఇంపార్టెంట్ టాపిక్. సెక్షువల్ హెరాస్మెంట్ అట్ వర్క్ ప్లేస్ ఇస్ డిఫైన్డ్ బై సుప్రీం కోర్ట్ ఇన్ విశాఖ కేస్. లేటర్ ఆన్ ఇట్ ఈస్ డిఫైన్డ్ అండర్ ద లా. పాష్ యాక్ట్ అంటాం, పాష్ యాక్ట్ కింద దాన్ని డిఫైన్ చేయడం జరిగింది. అయితే యుల్ బీ surprised to know that sexual harassment is not just a physical touch. Even a sexually colored remark or discussing a woman's character amounts to sexual harassment. So you have to know legally what is the definition given for each of these terms. Then tarvata next we have to understand briefly the causes. What causes? And remember, whenever I usually discuss in the class also, students usually tell me that patriarchy is the cause for all problems related to women. I totally agree, but there are many facets of patriarchy. Patriarchy is a very broad based concept. So what are the different facets of patriarchy that lead to violence against women? For example, whenever we say honor killing is basically because a woman has violated a rule made by the family or the society. She's married, she wants to get married or she has married against the social norms, intercaste, interreligious marriages. That is the reason why honor killing happens. The cause of honor killing is the fact that we associate a woman's behavior, the honor of the family, with the women's behavior. Okay, Kani, when we talk about female feticide and infanticide, we are not talking about honor there. It is basically the feeling that you don't want a child in the family, and a female child oddu. They don't want a girl child. Why don't they want a girl child? Because many families feel girl child is an economic and social burden. Economic burden, why? Because dowry should be given, you have to spend money to bring her up. Social burden because protecting a woman is very difficult. If the girl is sexually abused, then the family's honor is violated. This is how we feel. So atla reasons for each of these problems will be very different. So we have to understand the causes. For some of them I'm going to tell you about the impact. Meek simple ga cheppalante sex ratio, male to female sex ratio will be low because of which of these problems ante it is because of female feticide and infanticide. When you kill a girl in the womb or after birth, automatically the sex ratio, there will be a difference. Because there is a difference in sex ratio, automatically there will be other problems like bride price and so on. So atla you have to understand the impact, then we have to understand the laws related to them. వీటి మీద క్వశ్చన్స్ వచ్చే ఛాన్సెస్ ఎక్కువ ఉంటాయి. యూ హ్యావ్ టు అండర్స్టాండ్ ఆల్ ఇంపార్టెంట్ లాస్. ఇక్కడ ఉంది కదా, ఐఎమ్ గోయింగ్ టు ఎక్స్ప్లెయిన్ ద లాస్ అలాంగ్ విత్ ద ప్రాబ్లమ్. ఫర్ ఎగ్జాంపుల్, వెన్ ఐ డిస్కస్ యాసిడ్ అటాక్స్, ఐఎమ్ గోయింగ్ టు టెల్ యూ ద ప్రొవిజన్స్ అండర్ నిర్భయ యాక్ట్ రిలేటెడ్ టు యాసిడ్ అటాక్స్. వెన్ ఐ డిస్కస్ sexual abuse, I'm going to discuss the Nirbhaya Act and the Disha Act briefly. I'm also going to give you a comparison between Nirbhaya and Disha, and my gut feeling is there will be a question on Disha. Disha is one of the most important legislations that the AP government has brought in for the empowerment of women. So we are going to discuss Disha in detail when I discuss sexual abuse. When I discuss domestic violence, I'm going to briefly tell you about 498A and the DV Act. Okay. When I discuss female feticide and infanticide, we are going to talk about the PCPNDT Act. Atla, this topic is going to take a lot of time, and mark my words, this topic is important because there is a scope of 7 to 10 questions in all units. Ante 3 units lo spread ayi undi kabatti 7 to 10 questions vache scope undi ee particular topic nundi. So women as a whole, including all the topics that are given in your 3 units, should be covered like this. First we start with the status, then we start with the crimes against women, which will include constitutional schemes, laws and schemes related to that particular crime. Then I'm going to, towards the end, discuss the constitutional provisions, the National Commission for Women, the National Women's Policy. Issues kaakunda, there are certain schemes that have been brought in by the government for the empowerment of women that I'll discuss under schemes. So this is about the topic women in your syllabus.